Is everyone now accepting of the college football playoff expansion because we actually got?
I want to hear
a close
Q's
game?
reasoning. Like I want, because he understands how some of these people be thinking, man. Like some of the rhetoric that comes out and people talk about, oh, the committee, this, that, oh, no. Okay, well, undefeated, Big Ten champs, #1 in the world, throttled.
Yeah.
I
I would summarize it as saying this. If you're looking for consistency and if you're looking for 18 to 24-year-olds to show up and be able to like be at their best every single time they show up to perform for a game, whatever it is, like you're not going to get it. Like that's one of the things that I think always gets overlooked with college athletics and sports is like these are young people. These are not professionals, at least not yet, or not to the degree of the NFL. And so to be able to get these young people to come out and perform at their very best in the moment they need to is a much more difficult task than I think people realize. And it's one of the reasons why I think you see at times a game like yesterday between Ohio State and Oregon in the Rose Bowl happen. Because as much as we can talk about Oregon, I could sit here and tell you I've seen 2 weeks in a row now, or 2 games in a row now, where I've watched Ohio State play the way I thought Ohio State was going to play the entire year.
Lord Jesus, they play.
They look like the best team in the country.
It ain't even close.
Their coaching staff is doing the things that they should have been doing the entire season, where they lost to Oregon, where they lost to Michigan. Like, how hard is it to look up and say, how do we get number 4, the football, on at least 15 plays? Because he's that darn good. But I go back to this, like, I think it's really, really difficult at the college level to make people understand that, like, you've got a lot of young people, a lot of variables, things you're dealing with, and you're just not always going to get a team's best performance in the moment when they need it most. And that's what you saw, at least from Ohio State. You saw their best, in particular in the first half. And Oregon, you didn't see that. Not even close in the first half. And that's how you get a game like that. And look, you can say what you want, but like Arizona State Texas was a great game. Some would make a case they got robbed because of a targeting call.
Yeah.
So completely different circumstance, but
It's a horrible
I loved the
non-call.
games yesterday. It was awesome. Absolutely awesome.
That was a horrible non-call. And I'm a defender. If you're going to stay true to the letter of the law and how you're calling these targeting, they did not have a player in the game because of a way less egregious hit that they called targeting and ejected the kid from the game. That was a way less egregious hit when it's one of the most horrific hits. No, it wasn't. It was you ran in, you had a free run, you hit the quarterback, you called it targeting, you eject the kid, gets disqualified, and can't even play in the first half of the game. Can't even play in the game. And then you can't call that, like, that's as targeting gets. If you're calling it targeting.
I differ a bit in this sense. Is like, there's the problem with targeting. There's 2 different forms of targeting, right? There's one where you're hitting a player who's considered defenseless, right? When you strike them above the shoulders to the head and neck area. And if they're defenseless, that can be with any part of your body. And that was where this particular play fell into that bucket or that category. Because I don't deem the way Tafe, I believe is his name, or Taff, excuse me, I don't believe he was lowering, crouching, launching, using that portion of his helmet. That is the other form of targeting. So if we're basing this off the fact that the receiver's defenseless, I looked at that one and I thought, all right, I understand the letter of the law, but it was a play in which, and I've always felt this about defenders, when there's a pass that's thrown and you've got a defender at the same height as the person receiving the ball, like, I guess you're just asking them to constantly go low,
which is
like you'd rather him take out his knee and tear his ACL.
But that's the issue. I've been saying that from day one with this whole targeting mess. That is the issue. Do you understand the most effective way to tackle is to take your eyes up and through the shoulder? If you take your eyes up and through the shoulder, you replace your face mask with your body. Your head goes up and through, so you're not putting yourself in a situation where you're going to get concussed. Where your head ends up, you don't know what the man's body is going to do. So if I'm going for a tackle to make a short tackle, my head is going to lower if my eyes are above that player's shoulder. Understand? I'm going to make the tackle with my eyes going up and through his shoulder. So I may lower my head because I'm lowering my eyes to pinpoint the shoulder. As I go through that shoulder to make contact, my eyes and my head are going to go up. If my head goes up, there's a natural opportunity where my head may make contact with the head of that player. That's
right.
not me targeting.
Right.
That's not me targeting.
And even the timing of the play, right, when the ball was kind of arriving there and how he hit him and all of that. Like, to me, it felt like it was more incidental, where it felt like it was unfortunate. And I do think that, yes, and me saying this, all right, I'm bringing subjectivity into the play.
Correct.
But I kind of feel like that's targeting in general. Like,
that's
there's
correct.
A lot of subjectivity in it.
That's the point. You could have called it or not called it.
My whole thing is are we gonna make that the ball game? Because if they get the first down there,
that's a big play.
It almost changes the outcome of the game, and I don't. So look, again, I understand everyone's consistency with this rule, in particular at the college football level, and I think it's hard for a lot of players because in that instance, like, I'm not sure how you ask that player to play that. I mean, the ball gets tipped.
Stop.
The ball, so it kind of flutters like that. The guy's running over to make it. It's almost a bang bang. If he had caught it, turned, took like if there was a little bit more timing between it, it would have felt different. But because it was so bang bang to me, it was like it almost felt like he got caught between going for the ball, going for the guy, and ended up, kind of almost hitting him higher than he wanted to.
The craziest thing, and we've gotten a little bit off topic in terms of what the main conversation was, but I just want to say this: those were the hits that built the reputations of the Ronnie Lotts, the Steve Atwaters, the Ray Lewises, you name any of the great ones that played this game. It's the anticipation, it's the getting there, the timing, the setting it up. Those are the plays that built reputations and built Hall of Fame careers and built the excitement of watching football being played. That was one of the illustrations of what you did. That's what you call a woo lick. Like, you hear the whole crowd go, woo, woo licks. That's what they call them. Now, I don't know. I don't know what differentiates. Like, I heard all the reasoning you gave. That's targeting. I'm sorry. If you're going to call half of these plays or 90%, whatever the percentage is of what happens when these guys are striking the ball carrier or whatever it may be, that's targeting. I'm sorry. His head was down. His head went down, and he hit the man in the head. It's targeting. Like, I'm just calling it what it is, in my opinion. That's my assessment of it. I'm going to stick with that. But to the point, it was still a close enough game where we sat there and we saw Arizona State justify why they were in the college football playoff. At least we didn't run into a game where it looked like early on, like, I'm like, Jonas, like, chill out. This could be a game. This could be a game.
Yeah, I was calling it. I was closing the coffin.
I knew it was heading towards the blowout. Okay, it could have got ugly. It could have went one way or the other. Like I said, most of these games have had those moments where you could see like there was a momentum shift. There was a momentum shift at least 2 or 3 times in the Penn State-Boise game. At least 2 or 3 times that game could have gone either way, just based off of what plays took place, how it happened, how it was unfolding. Same thing happened in the Texas game with Arizona State. But you didn't see that happen. You saw there was one moment where there could have been a momentum shift in that Oregon-Ohio State game, but they immediately came back to the freshman phenom, and they kind of dashed it and doused it. I'm just saying, you looked at 2 games that couldn't have justified more if you want to keep arguing about who's getting in and who's doing what and why they're doing it, you could not have had a better example of saying, let the games play out. Let them play out. Like, they got in, they got in.
Whenever I hear people complain about in a playoff format, whether it's the NFL, college football, well, these aren't great games. That's the one aspect of it that you're looking at. The two most important things that I'm looking for when I'm watching a playoff game, either a great game or great performance. Ohio State beat the hell out of Oregon, but Jeremiah Smith's performance was, whoa, that guy's a superstar. And Brady's been telling us about him for months now on this show. And then I look at the game prior and I go, that's just a great game. Scatterboo, Arizona State represented themselves well.
Yes, they did.
I feel bad. I wish we would have Pete Prisco on today. We could have just given him the floor for 15 minutes to let him talk about the the non-targeting call that was made or not made there. But I just looked at it. I said, for anybody that's just going to take whatever the box score says and whatever the margin of victory is from these games, you're completely missing one aspect of it. You're looking for great performances, and some of these guys are becoming superstars on the bigger stage that we've ever seen in college football, because we've never had anything like this before.
And here's the other thing I'd say on this topic. If you were looking for so far a semifinal that's going to include Ohio State, Texas, the winner of Notre Dame and Georgia and Penn State.
You got it right.
And yeah, exactly. And one got through Oregon, which to get there, which you'd say, okay, that they were probably part of that. If we're talking about, we just named 5 teams, Oregon was 6. Those are probably your 6 best teams this season.
They got it right.
You ultimately got to the point where it was right. And I'll go back to the initial point of the margin of victory in some of this. People tend to forget too, some of these teams are built to win their conference. Some of these teams are built to kind of win, based on how they recruit, how they built their team. It's not always going to match up well. And we see that sometimes. We see all the time. We see in the NFL all the time. Teams who win a certain division, they go try to play another team from another division, and they struggle because they're not built the same exact way. You built your team. You build your teams in the NFL to win your division, and you go from there to then win a Super Bowl. So oftentimes in college football, you're building your team to win your conference. I mean, we've seen Michigan now beat what looks to be the best team in the Big Ten in Ohio State, and they went ahead and beat down on Alabama, who was, maybe not the best team in the SEC, but one of the better teams, at least one of the more competitive. And they're not even a part of this conversation. And so if you're looking at it from that standpoint, you're like, all right, is maybe Michigan better built for the Big Ten, or just better built for some of the best teams in the country? Because of how they're able to play in the trenches, what they do defensively. I don't know how you make any sense of it outside of just saying, these are 18 to 24-year-olds. They don't always show up and perform at their top end collectively or individually every single week. It's just how it works out. But I thought the games themselves were an awesome representation of college football. It's tragic that we didn't get obviously the Sugar Bowl last night. Yeah. We will today with everything that's going on. But, thoughts and prayers are obviously out there with all those who are impacted by it. There's a lot of things that are still ongoing. Yep. So that's a sad situation. But I would say this, in regards to the presentation of the game, I couldn't have been any more disappointed with ESPN. And the reason why I say this is, there was some information that came along once it was known what was going to happen with the Sugar Bowl during the Texas-Arizona State game. And I thought they could have found a way to maybe push the kick a little bit. And I know a lot of people go, well, the Rose Bowl would never do that because they need the sunset. It's the timing of the game. Well, guess what, Rose Bowl? No one saw you. No one saw your flyover. No one saw the beginning of it because you got kicked to ESPN2.
Yeah.
So there's an example of one network that controls the college football playoff, and I thought it was as sloppy as it's ever looked. They missed a play.
Was a
second overtime?
It went out it was like a cliffhanger. They took you from the Arizona State Texas game straight over to the game hadn't even started yet. The game hadn't even started yet with Ohio State and with Oregon, and they took you away from that game.
Was that the second overtime touchdown for Texas?
Yes,
it seemed like it happened fast.
It was before the play even took place.
I was like, wait a second. This is the same drive?
Like a lot of people, like we were watching, someone goes, is that a replay? It was like, what just happened?
I thought the same thing. Yeah,
I had to change channels.
So
where I was watching it, I had to actually change channels to go find it because it had switched over literally right before the play started.
So you had one of two things happening. You have, one of your teams trying to advance and this overtime game that you're not going to move on from. You've obviously got to let that play its course. But you could have figured out a way to work with the Rose Bowl and be like, dude, what's 10 minutes, right? Like, trust us. We're in TV. Like, we'll find a way of capturing exactly what – it's not going to be dark. It's not going to be sunset. By that point, we'll figure out a way of doing this. But they should have known that at some point during the Texas-Arizona State game that they had more time. They could have played with more time. I thought that was sloppy. I thought it's like the one thing you can't do is miss a play in sports, live sports. If I've learned anything, it's like, because I don't know much about producing, directing, that's other people's jobs. But I've always heard, like, that's the one thing that will get you fired. You can mess up a lot of things. And trust me, on TV, when you're doing games, there are so many things that are messed up behind the scenes. You just can't miss a play. And in that moment, to like not be able to like see that how it was going to transfer, and obviously I was watching the Pat McAfee presentation of the game.
I was.
I wanted to hear AJ. I wanted to hear all that.
Them dudes are stone cold, bro.
Oh, it's great.
They are stone cold.
What was crazy about it was you get Herbie all of a sudden, like Herbie just chimes in like there was no transition. There was nothing, because obviously they were transitioned from ESPN2 to ESPN, et cetera, for the Ohio State Oregon game. So I looked at them like this is what we want for college football. We want just ESPN controlling this, and then a sloppy performance like this. Like I was not overly impressed with any part of that. And I think if college football is being serious about the presentation of like the ultimate portion of their sport, they need to open it up. They need to allow more big networks to be involved, because that was not a highlight for me yesterday.
They greedy too with what they do. I heard their take on everything that's going on and what they had control of, even with the
how many times are they going to walk back then how great the SEC is?
Oof.
I mean, if Notre Dame beats Georgia, all we heard for the entire year is every single person who's a part of that network cry for the SEC, try to make a case for the SEC. The SEC is a great conference. It is. Maybe some years it is the best. It doesn't feel like it is this year.
No.
I'll put it this way. You put Oregon up against Georgia, I don't know that Georgia advances. You put Oregon up against Texas, like we might have saw one of the best matchups. Unfortunately, it wasn't the best game in the Rose Bowl. That might have been what a lot of people feel like was the national championship because of how good Oregon was this year, and then just how well Ohio State apparently can be when they play at their best.
Well, I'll say this. While we're talking about the four-letter company and the network, I wonder what those guys, the crew from First Take, are going to have to say about the coach of the Ohio.
Hey, you don't want to get.
We don't want that smoke.
Yeah, you don't want to get on Shannon's.
I'm just curious. What are they going to say about Dave's job now?
Yeah, you don't.
I'm curious to hear what they're going to say.
Yeah,
because there's a lot there. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Are they waiting for the L? Is there an L that is the kind? If they keep playing the way they're going to play, I don't think anybody can touch them. But with that being said, what are you going to say about Ryan Day and this Ohio State team? What are you going to say about, do they need a new coach? Hey, Ohio State fans, relax. You got a good-ass coach, and you got a good-ass team.
That was great, man.
Relax.